Friends, today's story is about a mother pushed to the edge. It was the holy month of Ramadan, but her stove hadn't been lit in days. Her children were crying from hunger, and she had no way left to feed them. Finally, she gathered the courage to go to the market, hoping anyone, might help her. But the world can be cruel. When she asked a shopkeeper for some food on credit, the condition he gave her made the ground slip from beneath her feet. She was just a mother trying to feed her kids. But here, her dignity was being put up for sale. What should she do? Sacrifice her honor to feed her children or walk away with empty hands? Will someone come to her aid? Or has fate closed every door? This story will stir your soul and open your eyes. If this kind of real and powerful story touches your heart, give this video a like, subscribe to our channel, and tap the bell icon so you never miss what comes next. Now, let's begin. It was the month of Ramadan. In many homes, lanterns flickered through the night, and the warm aromas of food filled the air at sunset. But not in Nyla's house. In a forgotten corner of the city, down a narrow alley smeared with dust and quiet despair, stood a small, crumbling, rented home. The door was faded and cracked, the windows dusty, and behind those walls lived Nyla, a woman who had once known love, laughter, and security, but now knew only loneliness and hunger. She was a widow. Her husband had died years ago in a tragic accident, leaving her with nothing but 2 little daughters and a sewing machine with fading hope. The house had been cold for days, not just emotionally, but literally. The kitchen stove hadn't been lit in nearly a week. There was no rice, no flour, no sugar, no lentils, nothing but empty containers and hollow bellies. Her daughters, just 7 and 10 years old, had grown quieter with each passing day. The older one tried to be strong, but the younger one, Aisha, couldn't hide her pain. That afternoon, Aisha pulled at the edge of Nyla's dupatta and whispered, "Mommy, I'm really hungry. My stomach hurts." Nyla knelt down and wrapped her arms tightly around her. Her voice cracked. "Baby, Mommy is fasting today, so let's wait a little longer to eat together, okay?" It wasn't a lie. She was fasting, but not out of devotion alone. She had no choice. There was no food to break the fast with. Anyway, she held Aisha close and stroked her hair, fighting back tears. She could feel how thin her daughter had become. She could hear the gurgle of her empty stomach, and she could feel her own strength breaking. Nyla had never been the kind to ask for help. Even after her husband passed away, she took pride in managing on her own, stitching clothes for the women in her neighborhood, mending school uniforms, sewing pillow covers and curtains. She worked day and night, every single rupee earned through honest hands. But over the past year, the orders had stopped. People now preferred ready-made clothes. New shops had opened with fancy tailoring machines that made her hand-stitched work look outdated. She had knocked on doors. She had offered to sew for less money, but the world had no room for her skills anymore. And now she had nothing. No work, no food, no savings. Just a deep pit of shame inside her chest. That evening, as her daughters quietly sat in the corner of the room with their eyes half shut from weakness, Nyla stood by the doorway and stared at the dimming sky. She clenched the edge of her dupatta and whispered, Ya Allah, give me strength. She knew what she had to do. She would go to the market and ask for groceries on credit. It wasn't the first time she had borrowed small amounts of rice or sugar before, and she had always repaid as soon as she got paid. But this time was different. There was no payment coming, no job lined up, and she didn't know when, or even if, she'd have money again. Still, a mother's desperation can push her beyond her limits. With trembling hands, she locked the door behind her and began walking toward the market. The streets were busy, filled with the sounds of Ramadan shopping. People buying dates, fruits, samosas, spices. Naila walked with her eyes low, her feet heavy with shame. She thought for a moment about asking her neighbors for help. But how could she? They were struggling too. Everyone had their own problems. Besides, Naila couldn't bear the thought of being pitied, of being seen as the helpless widow who couldn't feed her kids. After a few minutes of walking, she reached the edge of the bazaar and stopped in front of a small, familiar grocery shop. It belonged to a man named Kareem, middle-aged, a little gruff, but someone she had known for years. She had taken credit from him once or twice before. Maybe, just maybe, he'd understand. As she stepped closer, Kareem looked up from behind the counter and gave her a half-smile. "Sister Naila," he greeted her. "It's been a while. What brings you here?" She kept her gaze on the sacks of rice behind him and replied softly, "I came to ask for some groceries. Just a little rice, some flour, maybe oil. I don't have money right now, but as soon as I get some work, I'll pay you back. I promise." Kareem nodded slowly and stroked his beard. Then he leaned in slightly and said, "Times are hard, sister. Credit isn't easy anymore, but maybe there's a way." Naila felt a flicker of hope. He continued, "There are some conditions, though. You'll need to read and agree to them before I can give you anything." Her stomach turned. What kind of conditions? Kareem pulled out an envelope from beneath the counter and placed it in front of her. "All the details are written here. Read it carefully. If you agree, I'll give you what you need. If not, just walk away." Her hands hesitated. Then slowly she reached for the envelope. Her fingers were cold. Her heart was thumping. She opened it, and then everything inside her froze. The first condition was shocking. Any woman who receives groceries on credit must first record a personal video, full face, full body. It will be stored as collateral. If she fails to pay within the agreed time, the video will be uploaded to a specific adult website. Any revenue earned from views would go toward paying off the debt. Naila's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the page, unable to move. The second condition was worse. If the woman refuses the video, she must agree to maintain an intimate relationship with the shopkeeper. She must respond whenever called and comply until the debt is paid. If she refuses or disappears, the shop will file false complaints or release blackmail material. She felt sick. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred. And then came the third condition. If she refuses both, she must offer her house, if legally in her name, as collateral. The shop would have the right to claim ownership and sell it if she missed her payments. Naila could barely hold the paper anymore. She folded it up with trembling fingers, placed it gently back on the counter, and stepped back. No, she said firmly. Kareem narrowed his eyes. Not acceptable to you? She shook her head. Never. And with that, she turned around and walked away. Her legs unsteady, her eyes wet, and her heart filled with sorrow. She had walked into that shop with a sliver of hope. She walked out carrying the crushing weight of humiliation. But what she didn't know was that someone else had seen it all. Someone whose eyes didn't carry lust, but compassion. Someone who had quietly taken notice and was about to change everything. As Nyla walked away from the shop, her heart felt like it was being crushed under the weight of betrayal. Her vision blurred from tears, but she didn't dare stop to cry. She didn't want people to see her broken. Her feet moved almost on their own, slow, shaky steps through the crowded market, back toward the silence of her home. People bustled past her, carrying grocery bags filled with spices, fruits, and meat. Children skipped along, holding their mothers' hands, chattering about what they would eat for iftar. The world around her was alive with joy, but inside her, everything was quiet, hollow. She kept her head down as she walked through the alley, unable to shake the sick feeling in her stomach. The shame she carried felt heavier than her empty purse. Her mind replayed the words written in that letter over and over again. Those disgusting conditions that dared to put a price on her dignity. When she finally reached her home, she hesitated at the doorstep. The same door she had left with hope just a short while ago now felt like a barrier to everything she had failed to provide. She exhaled long and heavy, then pushed the door open. Inside, her daughters were still curled up on the tattered rug, quiet and hungry. The older one looked up and asked with soft eyes, "Mama, did you get food?" Nyla didn't answer. She couldn't. Her voice had abandoned her. She turned away quickly so they wouldn't see the tears forming again. In another part of the market, across the street from Kareem's shop, a different kind of man had been watching. His name was Rahim. He owned a small general store, a humble man known for being honest and kind. He had seen Nyla walk into Kareem's shop, seen the expression on her face as she walked out, crushed, humiliated, devastated. Rahim wasn't nosy by nature, but something about Nyla's quiet suffering gripped his heart. He had seen her in the neighborhood before. He knew her husband had died years ago. He had noticed her daughters clinging to her side during market days, helping her carry fabric and thread. He had seen the way she always walked with pride, never begging, never complaining. That pride was part of what made what he had witnessed so heartbreaking. As Nyla stepped out of Kareem's shop, Rahim caught the look in her eyes. A woman who had just been handed an impossible choice, her dignity or her children's hunger. He couldn't hear the conversation. He didn't know exactly what had happened in that shop, but he knew enough. He knew Kareem, and he knew the look of exploitation. Without thinking twice, Rahim stepped forward. "Sister," he called gently. Nyla stopped. She looked up, startled. "If you need groceries," Rahim said, "please come to my shop." She hesitated, her lips trembling. "I don't have any money. I only came to get things on credit. I'm sorry." He smiled softly. "That's okay. Take whatever you need. No conditions, no video, no paperwork, no shame. Just pay me back when you can, inshallah." If not, then it's between you and God. I'm not here to trap you." Nyla looked at him for a moment. She could feel her throat tighten, her heart wanting to believe him, but her mind was still bruised from Kareem's offer. "No, I can't," she whispered. I just can't. Thank you." She turned and walked away quickly, almost as if running from her own vulnerability. Raheem didn't call after her. He didn't chase. He just watched, concern etched across his face. That night, the alley was quiet. The stars flickered dimly above, and the call to prayer echoed through the neighborhood. Most homes were filled with warmth, meals being served, laughter shared, children fed. But in Nyla's house, darkness loomed. She sat in the corner of the room, her daughters asleep beside her. She hadn't eaten. They hadn't eaten. And the heaviness inside her chest had turned into something deeper, hopelessness. She stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. What kind of world did she live in? A world where decency was punished and desperation was used as leverage. Was this the world she was raising her daughters in? But Nyla didn't know that someone out there was still thinking about her. Raheem sat on the floor of his store that night, staring at the empty shelves. His shop wasn't big. He didn't have much. But what he had, he wanted to give. He kept thinking about Nyla's eyes, about how no mother should ever have to choose between feeding her children and protecting her dignity. He made a decision without telling anyone. He gathered what little he had: a large bag of rice, a small sack of flour, lentils, cooking oil, sugar, tea, a couple of bars of soap. He even added biscuits and chocolate for the kids. Then he pulled out a new set of clothes, a simple, beautiful suit for Nyla. And lastly, he took an envelope and filled it with as much cash as he could spare. Not because he expected it back, but because he hoped it would give her a few days of peace. Raheem waited until the neighborhood was asleep. Then he made his way through the alley, the grocery bag slung over his shoulder. He reached Nyla's door and looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then, gently, he placed the bag near the entrance. He bent down and slid the envelope under the door. Quiet, without knocking, without a note, without any sign of who it came from. He didn't want credit. He didn't want thanks. He just wanted her to know she wasn't alone. And with that, Raheem disappeared into the night. The next morning, as the sun began to rise over the rooftops of the quiet alley, Nyla opened her eyes to the same reality she had closed them to: emptiness. The air inside her small home was still. Her daughters were still curled up beside her on the threadbare mat, their tiny faces pale and quiet with hunger. As she rose to begin her morning prayer, something caught her eye near something large, something unfamiliar. She blinked and slowly walked over. There, sitting quietly just outside her door, was a large grocery bag overflowing. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. She scanned the alley through the cracks in the door. No one was there. Silence. Nyla's hands trembled as she knelt down and carefully pulled the bag inside. Her eyes widened. Rice, flour, sugar, cooking oil, lentils, spices, a bottle of ghee, biscuits, chocolates, even a new set of clothes, folded neatly and placed at the top. Her breath hitched. Her heart began to race. and then she noticed a white envelope on the floor. Someone had slipped it under her door. She picked it up with shaking hands and slowly opened it. Inside, money. A stack of crisp bills, enough to feed her children for weeks. Enough to pay rent. Enough to breathe. Her vision blurred with tears as she clutched the envelope to her chest. Her knees gave out, and she collapsed gently to the floor. There, in the quiet of the early morning, she wept, not from pain, but from overwhelming gratitude. She raised her hands in prayer. "Ya Allah," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Whoever this was, bless them, protect them, multiply their risk. Let them never taste hunger or heartbreak. You knew my pain when no one else did. I didn't ask anyone. I asked only you, and you answered." Her tears flowed freely now, soaking the envelope in her hands. She woke her daughters gently and showed them the groceries. Aisha's eyes lit up like lanterns. The older one gasped in disbelief. They danced around the room, holding biscuits and chocolates, smiling. For the first time in days, "Mama, did you buy all this?" they asked innocently. Naila smiled through her tears. "No, my love. Allah sent it for us." Outside, in a quiet corner of the alley, Rahim stood at a distance, hidden behind a wall, his eyes on Naila's door. He hadn't come for thanks. He didn't want recognition. He only wanted to make sure the delivery had reached her safely. When he saw the door open and her reaction, his heart eased. He turned quietly and walked back toward his shop, his steps light, his soul at peace. That day, Naila cooked a meal with her own hands for the first time in weeks. The stove burned again, warmth and the smell of food filling the small space that had once felt so cold. That evening, as the call to prayer echoed through the neighborhood, Naila and her daughters sat together, holding hands, breaking their fast with dates, rice, and sugar-sweetened tea. She looked at them, at their glowing faces, and whispered a silent promise to herself. "No matter what life brings, I will never trade my dignity." This wasn't just about groceries. This was a reminder that goodness still existed, that not everyone was like Kareem, that even in a cruel world, there were men like Rahim, who gave without taking, who helped without expecting, who saved someone's soul without even speaking a word. And above all, it was a reminder that when one door closes, Allah opens another, quietly, humbly, and at exactly the right moment. That night, under a blanket of stars, Naila slept with peace in her heart, and her daughters safe by her side. Her test had been bitter, but her faith had been sweeter. That was today's heart-touching story. A mother's struggle, sacrifice, and strength. If this story moved you, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss our next story. Stay well, stay safe,